everybody, and welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. And today we're going to be discussing Trump, Fox, Twitter, which is now X, and of course, Truth Social. Does Trump have a big influence on the media? And with that, we do have a very special guest who's been on before, who does a lot of PR and understands the media better than almost anybody, Mark Thimig. And good to have you back, Mark, and maybe you can help us out with what are your thoughts on this media? Did it make a big influence on the election coming up with Musk taking sides, so to speak, and bringing the power of Twitter and X, and also his Truth Social? Did you see that to be did you see the media to be a very powerful force in this last election, Mark?
Thanks, Nick. Are we having a few other guests join, or?
Yeah, we do have other people. I'm just starting with you since you're here. I got Shaquille waiting in the wings.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, it was obviously a historic election. No matter what side you were sitting on, it was quite an amazing election for Trump. Obviously, he carried the day. For Harris, she spent $1.5 billion. Unfortunately for her, that did not resonate with the voters sufficiently for her to win the election. I think one of the most interesting things is that media is now evolving, and traditional media has lost a lot of credibility because it's pitched a lot of falsehoods, and as a result, podcasters and podcasts just like this are becoming a much more effective and realistic opportunity for people to get their news, their updates, to share thoughts, and to have a more honest level of communication. So I think, Nick, that's one of the great things about your podcast as well, that it has historically been a great opportunity for experts to come and talk and exchange ideas, agree or disagree. It's not something that is as prevalent on some of the traditional media channels. Disagreements with the main participants there aren't well received generally, and if so, it's 5-1 or something. So I think the other things that are important is the involvement of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are very interesting in terms of how they have built a certain following, a level of confidence that I think helped Trump's credibility quite a bit, because Elon is so well respected for his accomplishments across multiple industries, and the fact that he was able to get involved in the campaign and take such a prominent leadership role. I mean, he really stepped in on multiple levels to help make sure that Trump's message got out there and to support Trump. And of course, his purchase of X completely changed social media in the manner in which that it involved itself in the election this year as well. There was more balance. There was less manipulation because Twitter had become more of a free speech approach. And I saw a recent study suggesting that the number of Democrats and Republicans on X right now is about fairly balanced, 49%, 49%. So while a lot of people think that it has gone more to the right, the fact of the matter is technically it's a balance. And that had not been the case previously, I think. So we're seeing the power of social media. We're seeing the power of podcasting, with Joe Rogan's podcast in particular, which got over 30-40 million views, and this substantially outweighed the traditional media for expressing the communication, and it gave Trump 3 hours to just talk, which is different from a 60-second or 2-minute traditional media type of presentation or exposure. So those are a few initial thoughts, and I'd love to talk more as other panelists joining with this broadcast.
Yeah, we bring in Shaquille from Australia, also Sasha from Canada.
Sasha,
And
nice to meet you
even
again.
though this shows the background of Washington, D.C., I'm in Barcelona, Spain. So welcome to that. And I know Shaquille will have some thoughts on this about Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the media. Did they make a big impact on this election in the U.S.? I know in Australia, you have a different viewpoint there, but what do you say?
Oh, well, look, I think mainstream media have finally been, slapped around enough to realise that what people have been saying to them for such a long time, which they, people are a bit fed up with the extremely biased and one-sided viewpoints being expressed by media, whether it be left media that go too far to the left or right media that go too far to the right. But hey, in today's world, as Mark said there, the idea that you can actually sit down with a podcaster and hear from a presidential candidate for 3 hours, that's a really positive thing, and that gives people who do have that interest in hearing more to actually be able to hear what the person has to say. I think Kamala Harris made a lot of mistakes with celebrity endorsements and doing sort of puff piece interviews and not really answering a lot of questions that she really should have had answers for. I think that probably hurt her. And I think that Trump, was sort of going off the beaten path. He was sitting down with podcasters that, in the past he may not have. He sat down with some quite young podcasters as well. And just sat there and not only did he speak to them, but he actually, I think, listened to some of the things that they were saying. So I thought he did very, very well. He obviously spent, 1/3, not even 1/3 of the money. And yeah, what is it, 1.5 billion they're saying now. So does that work out as $15 million a day that the Kamala Harris campaign spent? I think, for the Democrats, they should be very, very worried about what the future looks like for them, because I think that this could have really tarnished their reputation for quite some time to come. I don't think this will be fixed in 1 or 2 election cycles. Nobody can see the future, but I think their credibility is going to be hurt. And I think Republicans are always going to come back and say, look at how they spend their donors' money. What do you think they're going to do with your tax dollars? So I think they've got a lot of work to do in order to come back from where they are at the moment.
Yes, Sasha from Canada.
I think that Trump, during his campaign, willingly or not, he assumed a lot of responsibility, from the fiscal policies to foreign policies to really a lot. And even with the influence of his friends, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, and he has now, think about it, he has a Senate, a House somewhat, but it's still his, and presidency and judiciary and everything. There will be absolutely no excuse for him to flop on anything at all, because if he's not delivering, okay, now take commission of Ramaswamy and Musk. Okay, there is $1 trillion payment on just interest. If it's a year later going to be the same trillion, it means a failure for Trump's administration. And regardless what he's going to do, interview with this media things and Rogan and other stuff, it's not going to change anything. Now the peace in the world, peace in Ukrainian war, it's much farther from reality than it was months ago, when he was promising that in 24 hours there will be a peace between Ukraine and Russia. It's now he's quiet about it for some time finally, and there is no way that he's going to make it in 24 hours, in 240 hours, or 2400 hours. That's just impossible, because both sides are absolutely ridiculously on opposite of their desires and understanding of peace and what is good for their countries, respectively, and so on. So we'll see how that will develop. So in the meantime, what I'm saying is that Mr. Trump. You have all cards in your hands. You have 4 kings and 4 aces. You have 5 diamonds and 5 spades. You have everything what one could ask for. Please deliver.
Sasha, be patient, right? He's got till January the 20th because he said that he could be able to get the Russia thing sorted out before he takes office. So be patient with the man. No, look, I do want to say, imagine if there was a world war. Imagine if there was something that actually, escalated international affairs. And the interest rates went up to what they were in the 80s. Can you imagine if you had a 10 or 15 or 20% interest rate, how devastating that would be for a country like the US with such big debt levels?
Just really quick question, because you brought it up, Shaquille, and I definitely think that there has been an overexpenditure of campaigns, and one of the arguments that has been going out there for decades, I think it was part of even the background behind the Occupy movement and everything, was the amount of money that it costs to run a campaign with TV ads and everything like that. And this is actually a thing that came from howmuch.net and everything. As you can see, there has been a tremendous amount of money that has been spent on these campaigns, including close to almost $2 billion in the Trump and Hillary Clinton race. And yes, the Democrats did spend more and everything. So I guess the question, and maybe Mark Themick has got some ideas, is will we ever have a common man run for office and everything? Because even 1.3 billion was run by Barack Obama, and John McCain had 739. And then you look at Kerry versus Bush, and this is like tremendous amount of money that was spent and everything. And one of the things that historically they would say would be that you could get a common man elected and everything. Now, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, whether that's a reality or whether that's a mythology. I think it's more of a mythology now than everything. But I just wanted your take on this tremendous amount of money that is being spent, and has been spent ever since the 80s and probably even before then and everything. So
why is the 2020 expenditure so low?
Mark, one thing I wanted to jump in and say is, and it's great to see you again, is that, I think what was shocking to so many people was the amount of money that was paid to celebrities on the Democrat side to stand up. That was shocking. And I think if you took away a good portion of funds that were actually very poorly spent, I mean, $900,000 to be on the ball in Las Vegas for Hillary Clinton's face. I mean, for
Harris
face to be on there. It just didn't seem to be like a great decision, and it just seems that there were a tremendous number of payments that went out. That later, $2.5 million to be on the Oprah show, I think it was 2.5 now is what they've said. So on and on, this millions and millions of dollars, I think, shocked a lot of people. And had people known that at the time of the election, I think they would have been very turned off by that, because they've certainly been turned off after. So just a quick comment there.
No, but I mean, there's been
Mark, how do you respond to, or what do you think the result is? As I said before, the Democrats are going to struggle for quite a long time, because a lot of those small donors that would have put $20 in or $50 in or whatever, who are struggling, to buy their groceries, who are struggling to meet living costs, who literally were afraid that this could be a new Hitler. The other side being new Hitler. How do they feel going to the next election when, after she lost and they see the money that was spent, they see the $100,000 that was spent building the Call Her Daddy studio, I think it was, for one day, or like for one little interview? How do they react when they get asked after the election, "Hey, we're $20 million in debt. Could you tip a bit more in?" Because I've got to tell you, if it was my political party here in Australia or the UK, I'm not sure I'd necessarily go to the other side, but I think I would withhold future money from them.
No, I mean, there've been a couple of donation efforts. I mean, that
was the other mark. That was the other mark. Okay. Sorry, we've got a special guest.
I appreciate it. I think, obviously, that is a tough sell right now, to go back out and then to have let the staff go without any additional payments or severance, and then to put a GoFundMe campaign together to raise money for the campaign workers. I mean, it's just stunning what Kamala Harris's campaign has done. And I think, again, I go back to the fact that media is now changing. What I'm excited to see is if people in the podcast world are going to be invited into the White House press room in place of media outlets that get very little viewership. Are we going to open some spots, for podcasts there? So that's going to be very interesting to see as well.
It'd be interesting, even in the press room, whether we get invitations to the Joe Rogans or even some of the people from this network and other things to be there in the White House and all along those lines and everything. I wasn't familiar with the Kamala GoFundMe in terms of that. I was familiar with one for a movie because there's a movie about Kamala's campaign, and there is definitely a GoFundMe for that because it's a fundraiser and a documentary, but it's not by the Kamala campaign. It's actually done by, actually it looks like it's produced by somebody from CNN and MSNBC, and they are doing a GoFundMe that is around her career and her run for office and everything like that. And how that is doing, I haven't looked at it to see whether they met their goals or whether they will meet their goals, but it is definitely something that is being put out there and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and everything. And yet I've got tons of letters. I've gotten them from a variety of campaigns, including some in the Republican and the Democratic campaigns. And yes, it can get very frustrating because it seems like the political races never end. I mean, one of the things we talked about even with Trump is that he was running for office almost immediately after he lost and everything. So that's one of the things that I get frustrated by is this notion of the never ending political campaigns, because even locally, there are people that are running for office and they've barely been in office a month or two and everything. So that can get very frustrating and everything. So definitely this whole notion of pay to play, to use that expression, is definitely what seems to be going on in our political landscape, and it can be very frustrating. I don't know if my fellow Mark agrees with that or if Jacoby wants to jump in as well, but I do know that.
All right, so I'm looking at a bunch of so the Dems made a lot of mistakes. They paid Oprah's production company $1 million to set up that studio, as Shaq mentioned. But I'm looking at a bunch of fact-checking sites that are legit. USA Today, factcheck.org, Newsweek, even the New York Post, saying that no, celebrities were not paid millions of bucks. No celebrities were paid directly for their endorsements by the Dems. That seems to have been debunked pretty thoroughly.
So what does that mean? They weren't paid directly, but their production company was paid? I mean...
Well, okay, so that is the thing. They paid Oprah's production company $1 million, but they did not pay Eminem and Beyonce 1.8 million.
So what's the claim? That Eminem, Beyonce, Cardi B, out of the kindness of their heart, just came out and did these rallies? I mean, these people don't even like each other. I don't believe that. I don't think that anyone's realistically going to believe that.
Shaquille, they paid their companies, hence they weren't paid directly.
Yeah, so they weren't paid directly. As I said, their production companies, their talent companies,
But Shaquille, you can say the same thing about Trump, because let's not forget that there was that whole the arena that was created and that was made that Trump did as well. So this is not a new thing that is going on. It's part of that expensive spending that I think is going on both sides. That is too much.
The difference is, Mark, that Trump spent less than the amount of money that he raised. She outspent him by multiples, and she ended up in debt. I mean, look, I'm not American, so this doesn't really affect me personally. But come on, how many excuses can you make for them? This was a disaster, right? And Americans should be sitting there going, thank goodness we didn't have you in charge of the country. And, we are going to seriously question any future Democrat that comes to us and asks us for money. Come on, Jacoby, spin it for us, baby.
Let's set the playing field here. Because I think what Mark is pointing out is factually true. Melania Trump got paid to go to a particular place, but you never complained about her getting paid. Donald Trump has debts that he still hasn't paid, where he couldn't go to towns because he has not paid debts. You have a buddy in Turning Point, Australia, that was paying Donald Trump's son $75,000 to go speak in Australia. So this is just wait, don't interrupt. Let me finish real quick. Don't interrupt. So what I'm trying to explain to you is this happens. This is normal campaigning at this moment because Donald Trump had people that he paid back when he lost in 2020. Joe Biden paid people back in 2020 as well. Hillary Clinton paid people back in 2016. This is just normal campaign things that we're actually blowing out of the proportion at this moment. And we're going back to look at these things and say, this is why you lost. This is why you're so, but that's just untrue.
Jacoby, talk about changing the goalposts so
It's not
massively.
changing the goalposts.
We're talking about, okay, let me respond to you because you invoked my name and friends of mine's names. We're talking about what happened on the campaign. You start bringing up Donald Trump's prior debts from running a business, nothing to do with his campaigning. And for your comment about Joel Jamal with Turning Point Australia, or myself or other media personalities in Australia who bring people over from the US, yes, we pay them for their appearances. Yes, we sometimes pay for private jets and all sorts of things, depending on who they are, to come over here. And we do that because we sell their tickets at shows where we know that we can fill stadiums. That's the reason why people like Candace Owens was brought over here, and we're challenging, well, not me, but they're challenging that within the High Court of Australia at the moment. That's the reason why people like John Jr. and Nigel Farage, who came over here, etc. Those people come over here because there is an audience of people that want to see them. What does that have to do with campaign financing? We're not bringing them over in an attempt to get the electorate of Australia to vote a certain way. Totally different to what happens on a campaign trail. You're just moving the goalposts.
You've proven my point. I'm not moving the goalposts. I'm talking about people getting paid and debts that have happened. And you're talking about, yes, I brought up Turning Point Australia in that situation because there was an individual that got paid. These individuals get paid. Coming into, when Kid Rock went to the RNC, got paid. All these individuals get paid. But we're trying to, because when I came into the conversation, you guys were talking about debts. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm coming in where I heard you guys were complaining about debts. So again, yes, people got paid. Production companies got paid. Same thing with Donald Trump. But we're right now, because Kamala Harris lost, we're saying that this was all the huge problem, blah, 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 blah. No, that's just normal campaigning. We have to get over that part because that's not why she lost. That wasn't the issue at all. But
there are ridiculous. If you bring a celebrity over to do a show, of course they get paid. When Miley Cyrus comes to Australia, she gets paid for doing a show. What are you talking about?
And when Kid Rock goes to the RNC, he got paid. But what you're saying is,
but what people are saying is the Democrats wasted the money on things that weren't effective in the campaign. That's what people are complaining about.
Campaign money from the RNC.
I mean, hold on a second, everybody. One of the arguments that was made is, and I have brought it up before, is this notion that maybe the money was not spent in the correct locations and everything. Because I even brought up several times, and I'll bring it up again this time, that a couple of weeks ago when the Reverend Barber came to the Hayti Heritage Center, which is one of the places that I work in and everything, he brought up the notion that they should have done more campaigning in rural North Carolina and in some of the areas that were less, they should have actually reached out to parts of the areas that they did not successfully reach into and everything. He said that in using North Carolina as an example, he said they spent way too much time in Winston-Salem, Greensboro, Durham, Raleigh, Charlotte, places that she probably already had a sizable lead and was going to win. And she did win, I think, all of those areas and everything, but she did not spend enough time in, say, Asheville or Hickory or some of these other towns that are smaller. And that I would agree with his point, that they needed to do a greater targeting of the way that they spent their money. So that I think
agree. Mark was trying to say something. Mark Thimig, I think he was trying to say something.
I was just going to say, look, I think it's clear we didn't find out about the manner in which the spending occurred and how much was spent until after the campaign. So I'm not necessarily saying that that was the reason she failed in her election. I frankly think she failed for many other reasons, one of which was the messaging. And so this is more about a postmortem and looking at the situation, and was brought up saying, look at where it is today and how I think it was said how Democrats have lost a lot of credibility when it comes to raising capital for candidates going forward. That's really where it is. But I think if we want to get into the discussion of what really did not resonate with voters, that's another discussion. And I welcome that, to come up with the group. And I think Rick's got something he wants to say.
Yeah, Shaq said that we were talking about Trump's business debts. No, Trump stiffed campaign venues more than $1 million. Grand Rapids, 32 grand. El Paso, 570 grand. Prescott, Arizona, 26 grand. Erie, Pennsylvania, 40 grand. Mesa, 64. Spokane, 65 grand. Tucson, 81,000. These are where he had campaign events and just didn't pay his bills for the events. And some of these bills are 8 years old.
And I think that honestly, the money part and so on and so forth, I think Mark, that conversation, MT, I guess, yeah. I think that's where the conversation is better instead of the financing and nitpicking on spending here, spending there. Because if you look at if you honestly look at, if you go into the messaging portion of it, where there was a problem with the messaging. They started out with a great message, but then it kind of got washed with everything else they added in. And that's when the RNC and the Republican Party found their footing on where they wanted the messaging to be. And they created a narrative, because if you look at the spending around their messaging, for example, the economy was supposed to be the big thing. But if you take a look at how they spent their money, it wasn't on the economy. They spent their money on messaging about transgender rights and all this other stuff. And the economy was one of the lower messages that they put out, because they found that transgender message about, women and men in women's sports and blah, 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 that began to resonate, especially within the minority communities. And that turned a lot of people against Kamala Harris, because again, they had her on a video and that became that big messaging, and they were able to shape a lot.
It would be interesting to know how much polling each campaign did and how effective it was. It could be that the Trump campaign quit campaigning on the economy because everybody was already persuaded about that. And they found out that going with the trans messaging was moving people who weren't otherwise being moved. The Republicans have out-messaged Democrats for decades now.
Hey, since we have a guest, I had a quick...
you guys, the center-left parties around the world, you fascinate me, right? You've got like 90% of mainstream media in your court doing your bidding, spreading your propaganda. You've got MSNBC, for example, reading almost verbatim the talking points released by the Democrats every day. And then you sit there and you lose an election, right? You've been in power for 16 of the last 20 years. And you sit there and go, oh, look, the Republicans are out messaging us. I think you're right about your comments with the economy. But you know what? All through this election, I'm sitting here because, you've upset all the other conservatives and center-right people, so they've all left the network except for me. And I'm not American, so I sit here and I say to you guys during the election, I'm like, look, Kamala Harris should come out and do an interview. She needs to talk about, what's happening with Biden. Why did she not say that Biden was, or why was she telling everyone for years that Biden was okay when we could all see that she wasn't, that he wasn't? She needs to come out and do an interview. No, it's best that she doesn't. Like every single suggestion that was made, every single bit of feedback that was given to Democrats by not just center-right people, but people within your own party, Democrats within your own party that would express concern. You dismissed them, you ridiculed them, You made it so that they left, or at least said, you know what, I'm just not going to bother showing up and voting this year, okay? And then after the event, you sit there and go, it's none of that. Let's change the topic onto something else, and let's talk about how bad the terrible GOP is, right? The Labor parties in the UK and Australia and Canada are going to experience this very, very strongly. You're seeing a move to the right amongst those countries. You're seeing a move to the right in Europe. European centre-left parties have the media in their pocket, and yet you are seeing a significant move to the right in especially Western and Central Europe. Okay, why is that? And what do you think makes it so unique in the United States? The United States is following the worldwide trend of people that are fed up with overregulation, with overreach of government, with government trying to take a bigger part in their lives, with government sitting there constantly with their hand out trying to take money from them at the same time as they regulate them out of opportunities. Government that sits there and favours big corporations at the expense of small business owners and everyday people. People are fed up. And I don't know how else they can express that to you. They say it to you in their polls. They say it to you in opinion pieces when they write into newspapers. When people can't go onto big media, they jump on podcasts and they talk about it. You guys come back and you go, well, see, the centre-right people are so great at running small podcasts. No, it's not they're so great at running a small podcast. It's that they don't have any other outlet. And what do they consistently say? They've been saying this for such a long period of time, and they keep getting ignored. And for as long as they get ignored, it will be as long as centre-left political parties are going to struggle to win elections.
Shaquille, because I want to talk to Mark.
Okay, I'd like to mention something. Shaquille, you're right. The Republicans are great. The Democrats are garbage. It's done. You have won everything what there is to be desired. Now something else I'm not going to go into the reasons why Kamala lost. In my opinion, it's obviously Joe Biden's great fault, and that's the reason why she lost. But that's beside the point. Nobody is interested to discuss it anymore, in my opinion. What's interesting now is that there are quite obvious bets on stocks. The owners of the company who get access to the body of Donald Trump. Obviously, we'll start with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a great visionary. He was with Donald Trump, and of course, all his companies are doing fantastic. Tesla stock is flying. Now, the most recent enemy of this Elon Musk was Zuckerberg from Facebook, or now it's a Meta, public company, huge, but he was enemy of Elon Musk. Sorry. So their stock was not doing that well. It was actually going down for the last several days. All of a sudden, that stock is flying today 5%. Why? Because on Friday, Zuckerberg had a great meeting with Donald Trump. I would like to know what Zuckerberg had to pay to get access to Donald Trump and kiss him in certain spaces. And who is next in line? Because I would definitely go out and buy their stock.
Just really quickly, Mark Thimick, I was going to ask him a quick question along those same kind of lines, because Shaquille's brought this up a couple of times, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with him, but I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. Is this notion that the media is 90% controlled by the center or the left and everything, when one of the biggest networks out there, and I mean, I literally watched it last night, and they were definitely very pro-Trump and everything, was Fox. It's one of the biggest networks out there. Some of the biggest podcasts are definitely on the right, and that's been ever since the Rush Limbaugh days. And even, I think Jacoby has pointed this out to me, that Sinclair, which is one of the bigger players in radio, is actually owned by conservatives as well and everything. So this notion that the media is directed in one direction or everything, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but like I said, you're in the media as well. So what is your notion on this? Is it strictly a left-leaning media, or is it a media that is split at this particular time?
Well, I think a great point, Mark, and I think I'll raise two points and then welcome everybody else's thoughts. First of all, Fox is right now realistically the only major media that leans right. And you've got multiple media that are more left-leaning, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, and so on. So there are many more left-leaning. When you put them all together, they represent a significant voice in the messaging they're carrying. It also seems that they have been prior to this fed by the White House to have a narrative that when you listen, and I've seen many social media posts where they kind of show how these networks are all literally parroting the same script. So clearly they've been guided to do that. But I think what is interesting and is going to happen is that a lot of people have gotten tired of the negative conversation that keeps flowing so often out of MSNBC, CNN, and so on. And I think that's turned off a lot of people. And I think that's why a lot of people have turned to podcasting. I think that's why a lot of people have turned to other avenues. And while Fox is more right-leaning, they're not so negative, not, so constantly damning of people. And so I think there is an audience that'll stay longer there. So just those are a couple of thoughts. And I welcome other opinions.
I'll just say, and even on newspapers, you've got the New York Post versus New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, and I can just keep rattling them off. Have a look at
whoa. LA Times has gone conservative. They just hired Scott Jennings. They're owned by a conservative billionaire.
I know. But one person, LA Times has gone conservative.
They got one person.
Can we just?
If I could, hang on, Jacoby. Hang on a second.
Okay.
If you don't mind. I think that it's you should have a look at how much the left media has scared people. There are people that literally think or thought that Trump was Hitler, when Trump was a Nazi. There are people that have jumped on TikTok afterwards going, "What do you mean we're all supposed to get along? What do you mean you're inviting him for a sit down at the White House? You told us that this could be the last election that we'll ever get to vote in if Trump wins. Now we're all getting along. What happened here?" Okay, and something really scary is the level of self-harm, right, where people decided to end it in the first few days after the election. I don't know if you guys have looked at those numbers, but there is actually some real-world damage that people have become that sort of, flustered about things, all right, who literally feel as though their lives are going to end, their children's lives are going to be made worse, and it's not necessary. And the very same people that sit there and say that the other side is being divisive because they think there is a difference between somebody who was born a male who now identifies as a female, pre or post surgery and hormone treatments, there's a difference between them and a biological female. You say that's divisive, while you've got people, including celebrities and media people like Joy Reid, who are saying, for Thanksgiving, let's not go and hang out with anybody in our family that voted for Donald Trump. This air of moral superiority. And yet to sit down and listen to Democrats, none of those could possibly be factors. It couldn't be their divisiveness. It couldn't be their superiority. It couldn't be them being out of touch. The only possible thing it could be is racism and misogyny. I mean, the rest of us are saying, give us a break.
Just really quickly, and then I'll go toss it to Toby and everything.
Jump in real fast, Mark.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things, and this is why there is an issue. And you're trying to talk about the balance of and the even and all this and that, the other thing. But we tend to forget. Number one, Fox News was putting out that people were pedophiles. Springfield, Ohio got stochastically terrorized by Donald Trump and the cats and dogs issue. Fox News was the one that backed it up. If we're talking about mainstream media, the viewership on Fox News is higher than any other group. So that would be considered the mainstream media. If we're talking about real world harm, all the stuff they get, the divisiveness and so on and so forth, these things actually permeated a lot from Donald Trump. But we sanitized what he said. We overlooked and called it jokes and everything else. And then when people actually tried to push back on it, they were called divisive. So this is the great trick that is going on. At this moment, people are trying to push back and say that, well, you're racist for calling out racism. And that is the issue. Yes, if somebody drops the N-word, if somebody says white nation, just like the Oklahoma State or the Oklahoma senator governor just did, talking about how he's going to help Donald Trump, and this is the white administration. Yeah, sure, it was a faux pas that he may have done, but it may not have been. but these things getting called out and pointed to and allowing him to speak, but him not even correcting it, that is a problem. And there's nothing wrong with calling that out. When we're talking about the media itself, Mark MT, you can point out that Sinclair Media honestly owns more local stations. More right-wing groups own more local TV stations, not just radio. So when we're talking about all this media and all this happiness and so on and so forth, like the right wing was so joyous. No, they weren't. When they were talking about a revolution, Shaq, hold on, Shaq, hold on. Are you saying when they talked about having an armed revolution, that was happy talk? No, it wasn't. That is January 6th happened because the actual mainstream media, the one that's most watched by these individuals, utilize this to bring all these individuals together. So when we're trying to have this balanced conversation, yes, there were issues on the left, but you cannot ignore the fact that most local stations, and they've done studies on it, most local stations are owned by right-wing individuals. All the media itself was not just campaigning for the left wing. It wasn't. And all the media itself that Donald Trump put out got sanitized. When he's talking about Arnold Palmer's junk, nobody wants to hear about that. But then he turns around and calls Kamala Harris a fascist. Anybody who's against him is an enemy from within and all this other stuff. That wasn't a joke.
That's not what he said. That's not what he said at all.
Pointed out, that is not calling that. We're at the point where, Shaq, you're telling me I'm wrong because I'm pointing out these things that he said. No,
he didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say everybody who doesn't agree with me on anything is the enemy of him.
Let me pull up the video. These things are recorded.
I think that the part of the challenge here is that they were referring on MSNBC, CNN, and so on to Trump being a dictator, a fascist, Hitler, all those things. Now, having said that, the fact that Biden just pardoned his son on Sunday really sent a lot of the media on the left into a real quandary right now, because he said he wasn't going to do it. And they said, oh, wait a minute. Trump was supposedly the guy who was going to be anti-democratic. And in fact, what just happened here? So
Mark, quick question to you.
And this is where, right, Republicans and center-right people, you spoke for quite some time. You spoke for quite some time, Jacoby.
Let me just ask this question. We've got a guest. So
why can't I respond to the guest?
Hold on. I was asking him a question. Mark, now, did Donald Trump push out that Kamala Harris was a fascist and Joe Biden was a fascist? Did he say that from the stand?
Oh, I think he probably said that more than once, many times.
And so when he's parroting that with his millions of followers, along with Elon Musk, who's parroting that with his millions of Twitter followers, and he boosted his tweets so more people would see them. And then you have Fox News, Newsmax, and all the other organizations that the right wing only trusts. Isn't that a problem in the similar fashion where you're saying that MSNBC calling Trump this?
I think that messaging on the left, quite frankly, went further because it actually resulted in 2 attempts on Trump's life, which suggested that it may very well have been more vitriol and more successful in presenting Trump as a dictator or someone that had to be gotten rid of. And I think that I don't think Trump really expressed his comments in a way that suggested that anybody ought to be shot, killed, or literally removed, or democracy is going to end.
He did. And on top of that, are you saying that there were no that?
Are you taking over? Because we can leave. Are you taking over from here?
Now,
I'm asking you a question because I wanted to say something, and you complained about round robin, and you've gone you mark, and then back to you again. Did the rest of us get a shot here or what?
Go ahead. I'd love to have everybody in the conversation, and Shaquille, I jump in, man.
Well, I'd love to, but see what
No,
happens
Shaq.
is when Jacoby wants to take over, the rest of us
Shaq,
get
I
crowded out.
can add one last question.
Well,
But
go for it,
no,
Jacoby. Take another
Shaq,
10 minutes, as
Shaq,
you usually bloody do.
Go.
Go for it, Shaq.
So I think that the media has played a part in what you said there, Mark. But it was been predicted by right-leaning media and by Republicans and conservatives around the world that Joe Biden was not going to make it to the 2020 election. 2024 election. That he wasn't going to make it there. That he would drop out. It was predicted that if they let it go too late, they wouldn't have time to replace him with somebody who would end up being Kamala Harris. That's exactly what happened. That's what people said was going to happen. The Democrats denied. When we could clearly see that Joe Biden was struggling cognitively, that he was falling behind, he was looking off in the distance. We could all see that. Most of us have got older relatives or older relatives with friends that that have that same sort of look, and it was actually quite tragic and quite difficult to watch. And what did we get back? Well, when Katie McEnany had stated back when Donald Trump was the president before, said, look, he's so energetic, some of his younger staffers are actually having problems keeping up with him. And so what does the Biden administration say? Oh, Biden is actually, when you're not watching, when the cameras aren't there, he's actually really energetic and his young 20-year-old staffers can't keep up with him. And nobody believed it. It requires you to believe something that is completely unbelievable. And then Kamala Harris ends up coming in, and then they focus and cut and nitpick every kind of thing that he says and take it out of context and never do the same thing. And was it ABC that was 100% positive coverage for Kamala Harris? And so same thing with pardoning Hunter Biden. I think everybody expected that he was going to do it. And Democrats kept saying, including people on this show, kept saying, no, he said he's not going to do it, et cetera, and then he does it, and let's change the topic. And then, Jatovi, you start asking questions of our guest, and yet, when questions are asked to you like that, you sit there and go, oh, that's whataboutism. Oh, that's a false equivalence. So, as usual, there's always an excuse, there's always a way to overlook things on your side, because it's pretty clear that Democrats cannot take one scintilla of criticism. Not one tiny little bit of criticism can they take and say, yeah, okay, maybe we need to rethink what we're doing.
Shaquille, just really quickly before you tell me to respond to that, I think that I've said several things to criticize the Democratic Party and along those lines, and I think other people, including Rick, have said they think they've been critical as well. So this notion that we can't take criticism is a falsity, because I've definitely pointed out things, including not going to rural North Carolina and rural parts of Pennsylvania and the whole union conversation and a number of other things. Now, one of the things, and I love to hear Mark.
You guys sat there and slammed people in North Carolina who were complaining that FEMA aid wasn't getting to them. And yet, while I was away, no comments at all did I hear, right, criticizing FEMA staff who were told not to go and provide help to people that had Trump signs out the front. Nothing was said on the network about that.
Including with Kim, that brought that up and everything. So that can be said, because
that conversation that you had was in support of Democrats and justified. That was an attempt to justify FEMA's actions. There was no like, yeah, look, that looks really bad. We shouldn't be doing that. That needs to be dealt with. None of that happened.
Just because that the hurricane in North Carolina personally affected me, because having friends and actually family members out there, let me speak on what you are lying about. Yes, when people were criticizing and
I'm lying about what we say on our TV in Australia. Okay.
I'm speaking real quick. So
yeah, well, if you're going to defame me, are you saying that I'm lying about what is reported in our media?
You to understand that you're just over talking people and making up ideas.
If you're going to defame me, answer my question. Are you telling this audience that I have lied about what is reported in our media?
You asked me a question and tried to call me out. Let me respond to you, please.
You called me a liar. No, you called me a liar.
I am calling you a liar because
nobody called me a liar, and I've asked you a specific question. Are you saying that I'm lying about what has been reported in Australian media?
Let me finish. When we came on here and did a show and we were talking about people being critical of what was going on in FEMA, yes, we talked about how individuals that were in the West that were suffering had a gripe because they were not immediately taken care of because they were struggling and they were in harm's way and they were feeling it. So they had a gripe. But the thing was, they didn't realize everything that was going on. So when we came in and the discussion began to lead on, and we were talking how you kept trying to give up some bogus conspiracy thing that was getting pushed out by the right-wing media, that, oh, nobody's doing anything for you, and then on top of that, oh, they're stealing money from FEMA to pay for illegal immigrants, which was a right-wing conspiracy, which caused actually a lone wolf to go out and try and hunt down the FEMA workers, talk about real world consequences. That is where we said, do not do that. That is where we talked about, don't make up conspiracy lies and push those things, because honestly, FEMA is trying to work. FEMA is working hard because they cannot get to the man where the bridge is broken and can't get across until there is some safe travel or safe passage there. That gentleman is going to be upset because it's not happening now. And he's seeing them build it, but it's not there now and he needs it now. So they had a gripe. They had a legitimate gripe, and that's fine. But when we come in and when we start pushing conspiracy theories that cause problems for the people trying to help, that was the problem. And that is where you're not listening. And this is what this discussion is.
Jacoby, I wasn't.
And you know what? I'm never going to either, Jacoby. Don't call me a liar. Sorry, Mark. I'll be quiet. I just want to say this one thing. Don't call me a liar when I'm reporting to you what we are hearing in our media, okay? And I prefaced it. I used to preface it all the time. This is what we're hearing reports on. When we were first talking about this famous stuff, I said to you, there are TikTok videos that are circulating on the internet, and this is what the people are saying. And you jump down my throat about pushing conspiracy theories. So basically, anything that you don't like, we shouldn't talk about. It's ridiculous.
I would like to hear from Mark.
Mark Simic.
I just wanted to say, I wasn't on your program when you were talking about it. I did see a tremendous number of Facebook videos from helicopter pilots and other people who were trying to assist, and in some cases, they were their supplies were taken by FEMA. In some cases, they were obstructed by FEMA in aiding people. So I didn't get my message from Fox about this. I really got much more from social media, from the people who were actually involved in trying to help and rescue and support. That's where I got my information from. And it does suggest that FEMA was late to the party. FEMA wasn't necessarily as effective as what people wanted or hoped. There were a lot of people who were turned down for the $750 allowance that they should have gotten, which actually wouldn't even basically fill your refrigerator. So there are those problems, and they were brought out more in that regard by people on the ground. That's where I got my information from.
And again, Mark, I had people out there, and I actually have a buddy who was actually in one of the helicopters that flew stuff out there. I actually had people who live out there that set up one of the camps so people could come and get food and so on and so forth. I have a buddy. It took us a couple of days to actually get confirmation that they were alive and their families. So I understand what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. But what I'm speaking about, because there are gripes, and I'm not saying FEMA's perfect. Not saying FEMA's perfect at all. Never did. What I'm pointing out is that coming in from the outside, when we have individuals, as Shaq is reporting or even saying here, that, oh, well, these individuals are taking money and so on and so forth. Those things that did come up, which created a lone wolf that go out there and try and hunt FEMA workers. That's
Don't put that on me. I never said that. Don't put that on me.
What I'm trying to point out is that there were issues. Yes, we can completely agree on that. Matter of fact, the late to the party on this, and if we do comparisons in the past, this late to the party was what, 7 days after the actual incident. Puerto Rico was 13 to 20 days after the incident. So late to the party is all relative, but it's still bad regardless, because these people were struggling. And again, like I said, I was in a panic because I didn't know if my people up there were alive. So I'm struggling trying to figure that out. So
Yeah.
my thing is, again, when we have these conspiracies coming in from the outside, we do not need to be the echo chamber for those conspiracies, because we become the problem when we do that.
And just
Well,
really quickly,
I don't think we're the problem, right? You just sat there and tried to attribute this lone wolf to things that I'm saying. I mean, come on now. It's a bit rich. The issue coming into this election was that people of your country, as are the people of my countries, complaining that centre-left governments are prioritising the wrong things. That say, okay, you can shake your head all you like, but that's what people are saying, right? They're unhappy that there is a priority on things that are not in line with the expectations of the public at large, whether that be on immigration, which we're seeing issues with and complaints about across the Western world, whether that be on trans issues, whether it be on a number of things. There is a complaint that money is being misspent within the education department, that money is being spent teaching kids things that is not going to help them in their later lives, while their English proficiency, their mathematics and science proficiency is falling, right? These are all complaints. And what you are doing, as usual, you are dismissing every single thing said by anybody who's centre-right. And it just comes back to the same thing. There is no criticism that you guys can sit there and go, you know what, we better change. Now, let me tell you, what has the centre-right done around the world? Maybe not so much Republicans, but centre-right political parties around the world. They know they've dropped the ball on social services. So now they're saying, hey, we should be putting this money into our own people. And they've dropped the ball on climate change. And now they're starting to talk about alternative ways of being able to create energy. Again, not so much the Republicans at the moment, but this is what you're seeing. You're seeing the centre-right political parties try to be more encompassing of a wider group of people and more responsive. And that's why you see Trump's cabinet picks. I mean, you've got a bevy of former Democrats in there. But once again, no criticism that you can take. You're going to shake your head and you're going to try and twist it. And it's a conspiracy theory, and everything that everybody says that doesn't agree with you 100% is wrong.
No. And again, Rick, you can look this up. Everybody can look this up as well.
Well, give Mark Kenny the time and a chance to respond.
Hold on. This is super quick. What ended up happening globally in terms of the elections? The incumbents were running against extreme headwinds. The majority of incumbent parties across the globe ended up losing. That doesn't matter what side of the politics it was. It was just the incumbent party, because inflation really weighed heavily on a lot of people, and a lot of people thought the money was there. There are multiple other issues. Yes, people, because hence the reason, as I pointed out, the trans issue. Honestly, that wasn't anything that Kamala Harris ran on, but that got the message that got pushed in there, because that's where Donald Trump spent his money on that issue. It actually stuck.
Toby, I think I just want to make one point, because I know we're about to wrap up. I see our master here, Nick. It's just, I think what a lot of people in the United States in particular and around the world are saying, but it's certainly in the US, we want a businessman who gets rewarded on the basis of what they accomplish, not what they continue to just talk about and pass on. And I think people have recognized that too often times politicians talk on left or right about issues, but they don't solve them. Business people do not succeed unless they solve problems. And I think Americans in a majority at this point have said, we got a hell of a lot of problems across many things. Shock brought up quite a few. We need somebody who actually will be rewarded on the basis of solving those problems, and that's why I think a lot of people went the Trump side, whether they liked him or not.
I have an answer for Jacoby. 33 governments had elections in the past year. 27 of them, the incumbents lost ground. 6, they gained ground.
I'm going to say one last thing before you drop off.